Some NBA players become stars because they can do everything. They score, pass, rebound, defend, and fill every part of the game. But there is another group that is far more unusual. These players survived, lasted, and sometimes built serious reputations almost entirely on one single skill. Just one. Everything else in the profile could feel shockingly thin. Some barely scored. Some could not create. Some gave you no spacing, no playmaking, no versatility at all. And yet they still stayed in the league for years. That is what makes this category so fascinating. When one skill reaches a truly elite level, it can cover for almost every other weakness. And throughout NBA history, there have been players whose careers were so statistically unbalanced that the entire profile seemed to rest on one pillar and one pillar only. Dennis Rodman may be the clearest example of a player whose entire value centered on one skill. In his case, nearly everything points back to rebounding. Across 14 seasons, Rodman averaged only 7.3 points per game, an extremely low number for a Hall of Fame frontcourt player who logged major minutes. But at the same time, he grabbed 13.1 rebounds a night. He finished his career with 6,683 total points and 11,954 rebounds, meaning his rebound production nearly swallowed the scoring side of his profile whole. What makes the case even more extreme is how limited his offensive role really was. Rodman was not a shot creator, not a featured scorer, and not someone teams ran offense through. During his peak years, he averaged 16.7 rebounds while taking only about 5.4 shots per game. He stayed valuable by ending possessions, extending possessions, and warping games through one overwhelming ability chasing the ball off the glass at an almost absurd level. If Rodman lived off rebounding, Kyle Korver lived off shooting. Not all-around offense, not self-creation, just a jumper so dangerous that teams kept finding room for him in their rotations. Across 17 seasons, Korver averaged 9.7 points, 3 rebounds, and 1.7 assists per game. That is not the profile of a dominant star. It is the profile of a specialist whose skill translated almost everywhere. Korver finished his career as a 42.9% three-point shooter, placing him among the most accurate high-volume shooters in NBA history. In the 2009-10 season, he shot an absurd 53.6% from deep. What matters is that the efficiency never turned him into a creator or playmaker. His role stayed almost the same for years: sprint off screens, move without the ball catch, and fire. Nearly all of his measurable value kept tracing back to one thing alone: the gravity created by his shot. If Rodman and Korver are easy specialist cases to understand, Andre Roberson is the version that feels almost ruthless. Because here the imbalance is impossible to miss. Across 307 NBA games, Roberson averaged only 4.5 points per night while playing more than 22 minutes a game. For a player who started often, that is extremely low scoring output. He also produced just 0.9 assists per game, which means there was almost no real playmaking value to balance it out, and his three-point shot was unreliable enough that defenses were willing to leave him alone. But everything flipped on the other end of the floor. Roberson stayed in lineups because of perimeter defense. In 2017, he made all defensive second team and regularly drew the toughest perimeter assignments on the court. He was not there to score. He was there to disrupt timing, wear down ball handlers, and make life harder for elite scorers on nearly every possession. Then there are cases that go even further, and Manute Bol is almost a statistical anomaly. His entire NBA identity was built around one skill shot blocking. Across 10 seasons, Bol averaged just 2.6 points, 4.2 rebounds, and 0.3 assists per game. That is an unbelievably thin offensive profile for a center. But in exchange, he blocked 3.3 shots a night, a number that barely feels real. What makes this case truly wild is that Bol finished his career with more blocks than points. He recorded 2,086 blocks, but scored only 1,599 points. Almost his entire measurable value came from protecting the rim. He did not grow into a scorer, he did not become a rebounding monster, and he never developed into any kind of passer. But the moment he stood near the basket and raised those arms, he changed the geometry of the game. With Bol, one skill is not just a description, it is almost the entire career file. And that may be the strangest part of all. Sometimes the NBA does not need you to be good at everything. It just needs you to be terrifying at one thing nobody wants to deal with. Not every one-skill player survives because of something obvious like rebounding, shooting, or shot blocking. Some stay in the league because of a much quieter specialty. For Ish Smith, that skill was ball handling. Across 14 seasons and a long list of teams, Smith averaged 7.1 points, 3.8 assists, and 2.4 rebounds per game. Those numbers are respectable, but nothing about them suggests a major scorer, a dangerous shooter, or a special defender. The real reason he kept getting called lived somewhere else. Smith handled the ball cleanly, rarely broke the rhythm of an offense, and could carry a team through messy stretches without losing control. He was never the kind of guard who terrified defenses with shot making, but he was useful because he could safely organize tempo beat pressure and settle second units. That kind of value does not always scream from the box score, but it can absolutely support a long NBA career on its own. Tony Allen is a very different kind of case because his one elite skill was not subtle at all. It was stamped across his entire reputation: perimeter defense. Across 14 NBA seasons, Allen averaged 8.1 points, 3.5 rebounds, and 1.3 assists per game. He was never a major scorer, never a primary ball handler, and offense was never the reason opponents feared him. Defense was a completely different story. Allen earned 6 all-defensive selections, including 3 first-team honors. At that point, it is no longer just reputation. It is proof of an elite skill that held up for years. He stayed on the floor because he could lean on scorers, wreck timing, cut off driving lanes, and turn every possession into a physical argument. Memphis trusted him so much that he became part of the franchise identity. With Tony Allen, the career value did not come from doing many things well. It came from doing one thing too well to ignore. Jeremy Evans is an interesting example because the skill that kept him in the NBA was not shooting defense or playmaking. It was a vertical explosion, the ability to rise, cut, and finish above the rim. Over his career, Evans averaged just 3.5 points, 2.6 rebounds, and 0.4 assists per game. For a 6'9" forward, that is an extremely thin profile. He did not offer shot creation, barely had any range, and never became a major rebounder or rim protector. What he did have was something much harder to replace elite lift as a lob target cutter and transition finisher. Winning the 2012 Slam Dunk Contest was not just a fun side note, it reflected the clearest part of his actual basketball identity. Evans did not survive because he had a complete skill package. He survived because he played above the rim better than most players, and sometimes that alone is enough to carve out NBA minutes. Phil Pressey is a very different kind of case because nearly his entire NBA opportunity revolved around passing. Across 148 games, Pressey averaged only 3.2 points per game, which is extremely low for a guard. He was not an efficient scorer, he offered very limited shooting threat from outside, and his size reduced both his finishing ability and his defensive versatility. If you looked only at the scoring profile, it would be hard to believe this was an NBA player at all. And yet Pressey still found a role because he could organize offense. In limited minutes, he generated assists at a strong rate and fit cleanly into the job of reserve playmaker. He was not there to finish possessions. He was there to keep structure, deliver the ball on time, and lower the chaos level for second units. The rest of his game was never thick enough to guarantee long-term staying power, but passing and orchestration alone were enough to put him firmly in the one-skill conversation. Taco Fall may be the strangest name on this list because the trait that defined his NBA profile was barely a traditional basketball skill at all. It was size. Across 37 NBA games, Taco averaged just 2.2 points, 2.4 rebounds, and 0.2 assists per game. For a center that is extremely limited production, he did not offer shot creation, he was not a passing hub, and he lacked the mobility needed to become a versatile modern big. Most of his impact came from the simple fact that he was too physically unusual to ignore. At 7'6", over 300 pounds, with record-setting standing reach, Taco created an effect that very few players in league history have ever matched. Near the rim, he was a giant obstacle. He did not need lift range or a deep offensive package. His body alone created rim presence and forced opponents to adjust. With Taco Fall, the NBA opportunity almost starts and ends with one defining trait size. Jahlil Okafor entered the league with one very specific offensive weapon: low-post scoring. Across nearly 250 NBA games, Okafor averaged 10.4 points, 4.7 rebounds, and 0.9 assists per game. The scoring number is not bad at all, but the rest of the profile never expanded enough to match it. He did not become a stretch big, he was not a playmaker, and he never built major defensive value. What made Okafor stand out from the beginning was his footwork and touch near the basket. As a rookie, he averaged 17.5 points per game through classic back-to-the-basket scoring. The problem was that the modern game kept demanding more than a big who lived almost entirely on the block. When the shooting range never opened up, the defense stayed limited, and the playmaking remained thin. Almost all of his value collapsed back into one place. For Okafor, that place was interior scoring through post moves and soft touch. And that may be the most fascinating part of the NBA. Not every long career is built on being complete. Sometimes one truly elite skill is enough to create an entire professional identity. But profiles like these also reveal something cold and unforgiving. When the rest of the game never grows, your entire value can end up balanced on one very thin line.